Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. This is episode 3 of my brand new podcast, which is all about giving you the motivation and encouragement that you need to become fluent in your target language. Now, this is the first episode that we're going to feature a listener question, so I'm really excited. It's all about motivation and how to keep going after setbacks. But without further ado, let's get into today's question, which is from Adam.
Hi Ollie, it's Adam from the United Kingdom and I'm learning Mandarin. My question is, how do you get back on the horse? Your plans are great, working through them, and you're working on your language learning and you have a couple of great weeks. And then you have that week where it all goes wrong and you don't make any progress. How do you pick yourself up again without feeling like suddenly there's a mountain to climb or that you're behind where you started? Thanks.
Adam, thanks so much for your question, and what a great question it is. For me, this really gets to the heart of what it means to learn a language because, it's keeping going and not stopping that really ultimately determines whether you're successful or not, as you know, as you're finding out at the moment. So what is this thing of falling behind? I think that's what I want to dive into a little bit. What do we actually mean by falling behind? Because it's very easy to have this feeling, to feel like somehow we're not on track or we're not as good as we were last week, or maybe we're not studying as much as some guy that I've seen on YouTube or something. So I think it's really important to understand what that means, because if you've got certain expectations of yourself, certain expectations that you'll study a certain amount or in a certain way every week, and then don't actually keep it up or you can't manage it, then, inevitably that's going to lead to some negative thoughts and demotivation. So I'll tell you my approach first of all the way that I think about this. Primarily, when I'm starting a new language, I'm not taking it up with a view to learning it in 3 months or 6 months. I always think of it as a project that's going to require years of work. For a language that's not really very familiar to me, such as Arabic, which I'm learning right now, I'm looking at definitely a 2-year time frame, possibly 2 to 3 year time frame, before I think that I'm going to be able to have a good command of the language. And so when you're talking about this length of time, life is going to get in the way. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no way around this. Life will get in the way and it will trip you up. So in the grand scheme of things, 1 week that hasn't gone so well, or even 1 week that you've taken off, is really not such a big deal. I know how easy it is to think that it's a big deal, and I know how crappy it can feel when you have just maybe not kept up the motivational streak or the study streak that you've had. But I think it's important to remember that 1 week really is not such a big deal. And one of the kind of mantras, if you like, that I have been trying for some time to repeat to myself is something that someone said to me once when I was telling someone about all my plans and all these things I wanted to achieve and how I was getting a little bit stressed, and the languages that I was trying to study at the time as well were contributing to that stress because I put that pressure on myself. And this person just said to me, Ollie, why don't you just try to be kind to yourself? Be kind to yourself. And you know what? Just this way of, I guess it's self-talk, the kind of things that you say to yourself day in, day out. By giving yourself permission to be kind to yourself and to say, look, if you don't study so much this week, then it's okay. This is a huge thing because it means that straight away you don't have this self-imposed pressure and you can free yourself up to concentrate more on the task at hand, which is learning the language. Now, obviously, we've all had this feeling of studying a language, and whatever you happen to be learning at that time, it goes in and it sticks, and you can use it straight away in conversation. And when that happens, it feels fantastic. It's such a great feeling. But more often than not, I'd say, certainly for me, I would get this feeling of studying, and whatever it is that I'm doing, it just doesn't seem to go in. And then when I come to speak with someone later, I can't remember it, or I mess it up. And both things happen. You have the good and you have the bad. And the brain is a mysterious thing. It's very difficult to control what it is that we're actually learning. And, even if we study in exactly the same way, day in, day out, learning is not linear. We don't learn the same things at the same rate all the time. And often I've found that actually some of the times that I've improved the most have been after taking a break, after taking a rest period of up to, a month. I remember going on holiday with some friends and not speaking my target language for a whole month, and then coming back and actually being more comfortable and certainly feeling more fluent with it. And that's happened to me a number of times, and I think the only explanation for that is that your brain just keeps processing stuff when you are resting, even when you're sleeping. So all of which is to say that taking a break, not achieving what you want to achieve one week, in the grand scheme of things, is not such a big deal. And when you think that, as you kind of imply with your question, that it does get frustrating, then I think it should become your number one priority to actually get rid of that frustration, because frustration can't help you in any way. So not to worry about this is I think, an important thing. But having said that, there are some tactics that you can use to actually help yourself get back on the horse, as you say, after you've had an off week. And here are some specific tactics that I think you can use. First of all, having a schedule and a routine is absolutely key. Because when you've got something that's planned, and when you've got something that you're actually going to do, this is a really strong pull to get you back. So for me, the kind of rocks and the milestones that I have in each week are speaking sessions that I plan. I have, at the moment, I have lessons on a Saturday afternoon, on a Monday afternoon, and on a Tuesday afternoon. And I know that I'm going to have them each week, and they happen because I've arranged to meet my tutor. So, it does happen that I have a really busy week. I've just gone through a period, actually, with my Arabic when I have really done not very much for 2 or 3 weeks because I had to travel and I was really busy at work and all the typical things, right? But the fact that I had these speaking sessions arranged means that as soon as I did free myself up, then I was back, and I was back on the horse. I was having these speaking sessions, and that got me back into the swing of things. So if you do miss a week, having that routine does help you, makes it much more likely at least that you're going to get back to it. Now, if you find for whatever reason that it's not a question of not doing anything one week or missing a week, but perhaps one week you're really just not motivated at all and you just don't want to do anything, then I think that's a perfect opportunity to try and change things up and to try and do things a little bit differently. Variety is a fantastic thing, and if you're frantically working through a textbook or you're following a course very closely and you find yourself one week without the motivation to keep doing what you normally do, then by all means just take a week off and do something completely different. Watch a bunch of movies, read a book, go out and just chat with people, or have a week of Skype calls every day. Something different can just provide you that kind of incentive or that little motivational spark to keep going. So I hope that's helpful, Adam. Thank you so much for your question. If you would like to leave me a question, it's very simple. Simply head over to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask, and you'll find a cool little widget at the bottom of the page where you can record your question using the speakers on your computer or on your phone, and it will send it right over to me, and I'll do my best to answer it here on the show. Now, of course, it's a brand new podcast, and in order to celebrate the launch of the podcast, I'm giving away 3 free copies of my Language Learning Foundations video course. It's the course is a 10-part video course which teaches you step by step exactly how I learn a new language. It takes you through everything from finding the right resources to starting speaking with a native speaker, even if you're a beginner. And Module 9, in fact, is all about how to stay motivated, which is the topic of today's episode. Now, I'm giving away 3 copies. If you'd like to win a copy, then it's very, very simple. What you need to do is to go over to iTunes, search for I Will Teach You a Language in the podcast section, and simply leave me an honest review of the show. Be sure to include your name so I know who you are. And it doesn't matter what country you're in, I've got a cool little piece of software that searches for comments in every single country. So leave me a rating and a review. And after episode 10 of the podcast, I'm going to choose 3 lucky winners who will receive a free copy of my Language Learning Foundations course worth $97. So looking forward to reading those reviews. And today I'm going to leave you with a quote. And this quote is from Winston Churchill. And I think you'll find that it's fairly relevant to the topic of today's podcast, and it's something that I always remember and especially try to remember in times when I feel less than ideally motivated. And here it is. Success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. Now, I don't really like to talk about failures in language learning. It's only ever something challenge or something to learn, but nevertheless, success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. And I think that pretty much describes the task ahead of us when we're learning a new language. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. The podcast is coming out twice a week, so I'll see you on Thursday for episode 4 of the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. See you later.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, and in case you didn't already know, I teach languages in a rather unusual way through stories. Now, stories are a great way to learn a new language because when you're engrossed in a story, you remember things more easily, and the mechanics of the language just start clicking inside your brain. It's quite something, and if you'd like to find out how you can learn a new language or improve your skills in a language that you already know and do it with the power of stories, then you should check out my free Story Learning Kit, which will teach you exactly how this method works and how you can use it yourself to learn a new language. Visit storylearning.com/podkit, that's PODKIT, to get free access. Inside you'll find explanatory videos, masterclasses, worksheets, short stories to practice with, and much, much more. Once again, that is storylearning.com/podkit, PODKIT, and if you're lucky, you might also find a link in the podcast description or show notes of this episode.